Welcome to the Health and Wealth Power Hour, the podcast that provides you with the knowledge and insights you need to achieve physical, mental, and financial well-being. I'm your host, Harlon Pickett, a business consultant who's passionate about helping people achieve a more balanced and healthier life. Each week, we'll deep dive into topics related to health and wealth, including retirement income planning, innovative healthcare solutions, alternative funded health plans, and specific actions individuals and business owners can take to gain control of their finances, have access to affordable quality health care, and achieve peace of mind. We'll also be joined by innovative experts who will share their knowledge and insights on prevalent topics. So, whether you're looking to grow your wealth or improve your health, you've come to the right place. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and empowered. Let's get started. Well, how about this, gang? It is time for another exciting episode of the Health and Wealth Power Hour. That's right. I am your host, Harlon Pickett, and we have a super exciting episode for you today. We are very honored to have a 3-time best-selling author, a motivational speaker, a man who likes to do the hard stuff first. Oh my gosh, what can we be talking about? Well, we have to, of course, be talking about Scott Allen. And he is most famous in my world, anyway, for writing the book, Do the Hard Things First, which all of us hate to do. And as Scott told me before we came on, he does too, which is why he wrote the book. Scott, welcome aboard, buddy.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
You are very, very welcome, and it is certainly our honor. So let's jump right into this thing. Do the hard things first. Okay, do the hard things first, but I don't want to. So tell me why I need to do that.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's what people ask me all the time. And I think just to go back a little bit, the reason I wrote the book is because I did, and I still do, have we'll call it the procrastination habit, but it was more like an addiction to procrastination. So I think I'm fairly productive, and, I put a few books out there over the years. So there are certain areas where I could be super productive, and other areas of my life where I would just procrastinate on anything because doing the hard things is not something that, I was really, keen on doing. And it may depend on what we're referring to in context, but I wrote the book because, first of all, I thought that it would help me get over doing the hard things first and help me to, not that I needed help with motivation or discipline, but I was really struggling with some things that, needed to get done. And by not doing these hard things, I ended up setting myself up for failure by, just things happened. And it's like, wow, that could have been prevented. And I could give you a story around this in a second, but that could have been prevented if only I had done that one hard thing to get that thing done. And so the book came about just based on personal experience, but there was also a need in the marketplace for it too. So when I started to tell people that I was writing this book called, Do the Hard Things First, and people always ask me, well, how'd you come up with the title and stuff like that? And it's like, I was on the bench press one day, and just when I get most of my ideas is when I'm working out, and I just realized that's the name of the book. And I, just put the content together, wrote it in a few months, and people just, they gravitated towards it because it turns out that a lot of people really struggle with that. And to your point, not everybody wants to do the hard things first, especially first thing in the morning, or, but there are things that if we do them and get them out of the way, they will set you up for success for the rest of the day and probably the rest of the week. And if you keep doing these things, potentially for the rest of your life, you could, because the thing is like what the book's really about is, yes, overcoming procrastination. But what it's really about is building trust within yourself, right? Because when we put things off and we continue to do that, and that becomes our behavior, because really procrastination it's not a label. It's not that, you are a procrastinator. It's just that you do procrastinate. And when we take away the label, we're just left with the behavior. And any behavior can be broken. Yeah, it does take a lot of work. But if you start to, pick away at the hard things that are on your hard things to do list, which, one of the things I did when I started to build the system for the book is made a list of all the things that I wasn't doing. And there was a long list. There was like 3 pages worth, there's like 100 things on this list. So I realized, well, okay, if I were to teach this system to somebody, what would be my best advice? And it'd be like, just make a list of all these hard things. And hey, they could be, semi-hard things, kind of easy things, like whatever it is. Just go around your house, go outside in your yard, make a list of all the things you've noticed that you've just been putting off. And when I was working with people on this, people would go outside and they realize, oh yeah, like, I didn't rake my leaves in like 2 months and now they're all over the lawn. And like people are just coming up with all these, kind of like crazy things that they weren't doing. And it's like, okay, well, what would it take for you to get that done? And then it's just a matter of choosing one thing on that list and just choosing one thing for the day. It doesn't have to be 3 or 4 or 10. It could just be one thing. Because if you're doing one of those things on your list and you do that for like, one day, like if you do that one thing once a day for a year, you'll have like, that's a lot of stuff that you've just gotten done, and maybe not even for a year, maybe just, 3 months or a month, right? So that's really, you need to start taking action so that you just start to build those small wins.
So we're talking about hard things, but how often, because I know you spend a lot of time working on mindset and mastery, and when you go through that path, what you're really doing is you're looking at the human psyche, right? What makes us tick? What makes us do the things we do? How often do you see that someone is making something that's not really a hard thing into a hard thing? And I know there's probably a lot of that, but how often is it really just a simple thing, but we make it a hard thing because our mindset is that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Exactly. So that's perfect, because a lot of the hard things that we frame up as hard things in our own minds are actually not hard things at all. I'll give you an example. I have a problem with filling out application forms. I don't know what it is, but when I get a form in the mail and they're like, you have to send this form in to, get your loan, or like, if I don't send the form in, I don't get that thing that I want. And I will literally not do. Now, how long does it take to fill out a form? 10, 15, maybe 30 minutes if it's like a few pages, right? But just going back a little bit, like when I started to put my list together, I had things that I had not filled out for probably like 2 years, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to send that in. And if I'd sent that into the government, they would have given me $200, but I didn't do it. Like these are the things, and that's an easy thing to do. Like it makes sense. Fill out that form, send it in, you get money. And
10 minutes,
do it.
10 minutes, right? You get $200. That's a pretty good deal, right?
10 minutes, $200, that means I'm making like $1,200 an hour, right? But that's an easy thing to do, which became a hard thing in my mind. And it's hard for me, and it might be easy for somebody else, right? But getting back to somebody who, someone who has leaves all over the lawn, and, like to them, that might be a really hard thing to do. But they haven't done anything about it, so maybe their yard is a mess. The easy thing would be to do, like the other thing too, is like, you don't always have to be the one to do those things. If you're really struggling with it, you just need to get it done. So call somebody up and get them to come over, and whether it's like, cleaning your house or cleaning your yard or washing your car or whatever it may be, the goal is just to get the thing done. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it, but that's exactly it. Like, do the hard things first is, that's, everybody has their own perspective as to what hard things really are. For me, it's like cleaning my apartment or cleaning my house or something like that is another hard thing that I may put off until it gets to the point where it's like, well, this place isn't looking too good, Yet I could call somebody to come over and, maybe for $100 they'd like clean the whole place. And then it's like, now you're feeling a lot better because now you've got a clean space to work in. But yeah, there are definitely things that I think, like for each individual, things that we all struggle with. And so, my hard things may not be your hard things, but you just have to identify what they are and then just figure out a plan to get it done. And again, we don't have to be the ones to do it either.
So how often do you see folks that may make hard things of one part of their life, but not others? So let's say, hey, I have no problem cleaning my house. Man, I don't mind doing the dishes and washing and raking leaves and all that. But man, if you want me to go to the gym, that's hard. Or whatever, I need to walk every single day, or I need to do whatever for my health every single day. So here I am in one part that maybe someone else would struggle with So here's the guy at the gym working out every day and just loving his thing. His house is an absolute wreck. And then you have the other person, the house is immaculate or very well taken care of, and they just won't go to the gym or they won't do whatever it takes. How often do you see things like that?
All the time. Personal experiences, and I see that with other people as well. So actually, I have a story that is similar to that. So a friend of mine, he has got a really nice house. He loves working out. So when it comes to working out, he has no problem getting to the gym. He's very, conscientious about getting to the gym and working out, and he'll do that for 3 hours a day. Yet his house, his kids would be running around and there'd be a hole in the wall, right? So one day, actually, his son put a hole in the wall, and the hole was there for quite a while. And I finally said, after a few weeks, I was like, you gonna get that fixed, or can you, he's like, yeah, but I'm not very good at fixing things around the house. And you can call someone to come over. So the hole one day finally disappeared because he put a poster over it. So that was his, way of fixing it, right? And I'm like, well, the hole is still there, and even though we can't see it in your mind, it hasn't been fixed. So we kind of had that conversation, right? And, and so he was just one of those people where he couldn't fix things around his house, or he didn't want to fix things around his house. And I'm actually the same way, in my house as well. Things would break, and, my partner would be like, you gonna fix that? And I'm like, well, I'm really not a handy person. So, and again, when something breaks, I will just say, well, I'll get around to it eventually. But you know what? That's one of those situations where it's get on the phone, call someone to come over and do it for $50. So it's done. And meanwhile, I'm at the gym working out or driving my car, whatever it is that I really like doing, so yeah, but yeah, you could, so one of the good exercise too is actually when you're making your list of hard things to do. So I always recommend people to, make a list of yes, those areas in your life, like relationships. So let's take an example there. There are certain things that we're good at in relationships and some things that we're not. Now, I'm not good at having hard conversations in a relationship. I'll put that off if it's, talking to my partner about financial things or things like that. But we can talk about the dogs for hours, right? So I'll make a list of all the things in relationships that I'm, not good at, because those are the hard things that I probably need to be done. And then, you can do the same thing for your finances and for health. And, you can go around and just make a list of things in each area of your life. Maybe mindset is actually another area, or mindset, or probably personal development, and then just identifying one thing in each of those areas and maybe just making that one thing that you want to get better at. So, but you're right. Yeah. Everybody struggles with, doing the hard things, but it's, it really depends on, the person, I think, and, because, they are better at some things and not at others. And I'm not saying that you have to get good at doing those hard things, but you just have to recognize that it's there and that there's always a solution.
So it seems to me like one of the, and once again, this is your world, not mine, but it seems to me like one of the biggest hang-ups that people have of not doing stuff is they always have an excuse not to, right? That's the part of procrastination. I have an excuse. I can't do this today because, the old joke, I got to wash my hair, right? I can't rake these leaves today because it looks like it might rain. And, you don't want to rake wet leaves and whatever. It doesn't make any difference. There's always an excuse for that. Once again, this kind of goes back to a mindset. How can people kind of overcome that part of it? What's really happening at that point, Scott? What's really happening when someone is just finding sometimes a random issue? But let's be honest, if it's pouring down rain, it's probably not the best time to actually do it. If you think it might rain in the next couple of days, it actually might be cooler right now. And so it's probably a really good time to do it. But what makes us come up with these excuses, as it were, to not do it? Is it just another part of that? We don't want to do the hard thing?
Not really. Well, yeah, that is part of it, but it's also, I think we're creatures of comfort. We love to have, we love comfort food. And to be honest, I'd rather be watching Netflix than be outside running for 2 or 3 kilometers. However, I know that if I actually run first and watch Netflix later, I'm going to feel a whole lot better instead of just pushing off the run. Now, I don't really enjoy running, but I started doing a lot more of it recently, and I've always had an excuse not to run. I don't have the right sneakers, so and oh yeah, my shorts are in the washer, so it's not a good time. I came up with excuses for everything. And one day, I think I was listening to Andy Frisella and going through his program, 75 Hard. And he's like, and it's a pretty hard course. And I'm not saying I didn't do all 75 days. I always had to start it over on like day 6 or 7 or something, But he's like, and look, I'm not a David Goggins or anything like that. And David's got his own thing. But, if you look at those guys, they don't make any excuses and they're a little bit hardcore. So I'm not saying everybody has to be like that. But what I recognize is that I would just, whenever my excuses would come up, I would just make a note of it right there. I'd actually write it down. It's like, okay, I just convinced myself not to go for a run or not to go to the gym because, and I would make a note of the excuse. And that was like, so let's just say, I can't go for a run because it is raining. Well, that may be, but it's actually not raining that hard. And how would I feel? I would actually put myself in that situation where how would I feel if I actually did go running in the rain? Because if I proved to myself that I could break that excuse and just say, well, it's raining, I'm going to go running anyway. After that, after that, you're going to break the excuse because next time you can't use that excuse. Now you can do it, right? And you can apply that to anything else. Again, like something gets broken in the house and my excuse is, well, I don't have the right tools. Okay, well, what tool would I need? And I will actually just backtrack through, the excuses I don't have the tool. Okay, but what's the tool that I need? And can I fix it with these tools? And I'll actually put together a little plan for fixing, say, the hole in the wall. And again, it comes down to like, okay, well, am I the one to fix it? Or am I, do I have to hire somebody for it? But you can apply that to, like anything. Let's just get into like quickly, saving money, like that was one thing that I always made excuses for. I can't save money because, and the excuse will come up, I don't make enough, or I always have bills to pay. And the thing is that, we can always make more money, I think, and there will always be bills to pay no matter what. That never stops. So the real reason, I couldn't save money is because, and I would just make a list of the reasons, the excuses I was making, and how could I really save money is, I was actually, like wasting a lot of it on stuff like that I was like every month, I had bills to pay, but a lot of the things I was spending money on weren't things that I really needed. So when I recognized that, I was like, oh, actually, I could save $300, $400, $500 this month if I stopped doing these things, right? So the excuses are, we always come up with those, but they're just, it is part of our psyche. It is part of our mindset, but my mindset is really just, it's very fixed in the way that I will, like, whenever I come up with an excuse, I'll recognize it right away and go, okay, that's an excuse. I actually, maybe I don't want to do this thing, but I know if I do it, I'm going to feel great. And that's the thing. You have to put yourself into the emotion that you're going to experience or the feeling you're going to have after doing it. And believe me, like, it does feel great. It is hard when you're doing it in the moment, but you're going to be rewarded just because, first of all, you're going to build trust with yourself by not making those excuses. You're going to be like, yeah, I'm an action taker. So that was I think the mindset that I had to break was that, oh, I'm a procrastinator, or I put things off, to I'm an action taker. I get things done. And that was just it. So every time I come up with an excuse, I just tell myself that, I mean, you can look in the mirror and tell yourself you're an action taker, or you can just have a conversation with yourself, but I'll even say it out loud because I need to hear myself say it. I'm an action taker, and, I may not want to do this thing right now, but that's irrelevant. I'm going to get it done. I'm going to feel great. And then, maybe tomorrow I might even do something even more difficult. So.
Yeah. And I think that's vitally important. And, I'm going to go back to kind of what you said at the very beginning. And that is, if you know you have a hard thing today, whatever it is, just fill in the blank. Here's your hard thing. If you get that done first, and you get that done, especially first thing in the morning, man, the rest of the day is gravy, baby. I mean, you're rolling downhill. And the other part of what you said is you feel so accomplished, right? You feel empowered now. You feel like, wow, man, I knocked that thing out. Or maybe even something else happens. You're like, you know what? That really wasn't that hard. That was all right here. That's not going to be any problem in the future because, man, I knocked that out. I just thought it was going to be hard, right? What a beautiful thing. That just changed your mindset. And maybe you have a few of those, and all of a sudden, everything's not quite as hard as you made it out to be, right?
Exactly, yeah. And you said the magic word is empowered. You're empowering yourself to take charge of your life. Like that's really another big part of that book is, if you do these things, you're going to feel like you're in control instead of feeling like because a lot of people who procrastinate, which is all of us, you do it enough, you start to feel guilty, and then you feel shame and like, oh, I didn't do that thing that I said I was going to do. And then it just becomes another one of those things. Next day comes around, and you've got more things you put off, and it really does become a self-defeating habit. It is like a form of self-sabotage, so it varies. Some people have it worse than others, but yeah. One thing that I actually do, so I did start running again, and I realized like, okay, well, what if I did it first thing in the morning after getting out of bed? Now, honestly, who wants to do that when you first wake up, right? There probably aren't a lot of people who put their hand up. But I was listening to Tom Bilyeu, who runs Impact Theory, and he's got this thing where he hates working out, right? But he said what he does, puts his gym clothes right next to his bed. So as soon as he gets up, he's got his shoes there, his clothes. He doesn't have any excuses because, his excuse is to be, I can't find my clothes. They're right there. He gets out of bed within 5 minutes. And I was like, I'm going to do that too. So I started doing that and going for these little runs. And sure, the first couple of 100 meters, at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, which is usually when I get up, my mind was screaming to stop, and it wasn't even hurting yet, right? But that's it. But then guess what happens? You get to 300 meters. I got to half a kilometer. I didn't go for like 10-kilometer runs. I'm not a big runner, but I made it to like 4 kilometers that day. When I got past I would say like the 500-meter mark to 1 kilometer, something changed in me. Actually, it stopped hurting more. My mind started saying, go for more of this. And it became like after a while, it just became like a great little drug almost, like I actually craved more of it, so, but I found that was the way with a lot of things too, so yeah, just, you're going to have that resistance. The thing is that resistance is only for like the first, say 10 or 15 minutes until you get into the flow. And then after that, the problem could be maybe you can't stop. Who knows? Like you just don't know how far you can go with it. So,
yeah. And because success is addicting too, right? And,
mm-hmm.
and I've said this multiple times, and success is different things to different people. Okay. But if you are successful in just really accomplishing the defeat of your hard thing, right? You overcome that hard thing. That's a success. And when you do that, that's when everything, all of a sudden things can start snowballing. Now, I'm still a procrastinator. I'm still don't get everything done, but man, I got this thing done. I got control of this one. I know this was not going to be a problem anymore. Well, once that happens, now you can start moving on to other things. You can start changing your habits, because that's what most of this is. That's what procrastination is, as you mentioned earlier, is it's just another one of our bad habits that we have. Excuses are part of procrastination. It's just another one of the bad habits that we have. To me, I think it's very interesting, because I know I catch myself doing this as well, is what I mentioned earlier, and that is making silly little things into hard things that are not really hard into hard things. And who knows why you don't want to do them sometimes. I think it's just a weird thing that, I just don't want to do this. I just don't, like you're talking about with the forms. How hard is it? You know all the answers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's not a quiz.
No. They're asking for my bank account, my name, birth date. It's just too easy.
Right.
What was interesting though, just how I started getting used to doing forms actually is like I break it down into small steps, like we can call it the 2-minute rule or just whatever it is, but I would just say, okay, like every day I'm going to just write down one thing on this form. And this sounds really silly, but that's actually what I had to do. Day 1, I wrote my name. Day 2, I wrote my address. Day 3. And then by the time I hit day 4, I was able to fill out, like one of the forms was like 2 or 3 pages long. And, but it took me about 20 minutes maybe. But this was broken up over the course of a week. And then when I was finished it though, this is the thing too, is like you prove to yourself, oh, that wasn't actually that hard. What about that other thing I've been putting off? What about that form I had to fill out to get my kids' passports? They've been waiting for like 3 years to go on a trip, and I can't because of just like crazy things, and some of them are like, they could be triggers like, I don't know, going to government offices and having to fill out forms and stuff like that. I mean, nobody really enjoys doing that. But the thing is, like, these are some things that you have to get done. And if you put them off, like you said, you're not going to, you can't progress. Or maybe somebody, maybe
Right.
you could end up losing money and, or worse. So, but yeah. But I think that's a great takeaway though for today. Is just like, like a lot of these things we think are hard are just, they're kind of easy. It's just that we blow them up in our minds to make them seem like they're, and the thing is, like, it may always be in one certain area of your life as well. Or like you said, over here, you're killing it and you're maximizing on your human potential, and over here you're completely failing. So
I have a question that I'm going to make a statement here, and then I'm going to ask a question behind it. It's saying you talked about going to a government office to fill out forms. So that made me think about you're going to have a certain set of people who think, well, that's stupid. I shouldn't have to go anywhere to fill out this form. Why would I have to do this? This is ridiculous. And that can be across anything in life, right? Why would I need to make this phone call? They should be calling me. Or can't you do that via email or whatever? Just send me a text. I don't want to talk to anyone. Whatever it is. So how much of an impact does it have when someone's hard thing is just because their mindset is, I should not have to do this, or I disagree with this?
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, actually, because, so I'll give you a quick story. So the banks here, actually, they don't send out emails to you. They actually will call you and ask you to go in and do these things. And I had the same mindset. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, they should be sending me an email with the form so I can procrastinate on filling it out for a week before I do. Right. And, and that's just the way that they do things here in Japan. Right. But, one day my partner said, well, you do realize, like, that's actually not the way that they do it. So you can complain about it and you can say, I'm not doing that. But the thing is, if you don't go in and do it their way, you're not going to get it done because they're not going to change the way that they do things. Right. So that's just kind of, again, it was like changing my mindset. And when she said it, I was like, yeah, you're actually right. If I don't go in and do it, they're not going to come to my front door and say, here we are. We came all the way over across town to meet you. And yeah, they're not going to meet you halfway. And, depends where people live, of course. But yeah, and I get what people are saying too. Like, I pay my taxes. I shouldn't have to go in and do this thing. And maybe some people can't because, maybe like physically, maybe they can't do it. And
that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. There may be other options for that. But, just if they're not going to, if that's not their system, they're not going to change it, So we have to be willing to bend, right? And again, not something that we want to do, but the thing is, what I realized though is, like, when I actually went into the bank and did the thing that they wanted me to do, it actually took about, less than half an hour. I got that stamp of approval I needed for the loan from my company. And now I was golden, it's like, okay, well, that wasn't too hard. They didn't call me any names and it was done. And it was, so, and like that. Yeah, you're right though. Like, it really is a mindset thing where it's like, if somebody's not, I can't expect them to change the way that they're doing things. Right. And just because I want them to do it. So, and
right.
I've been on the phone with them saying, why do I have, like coming up with, trying to justify my behavior as to like why I need to be the one to go over there and do it. And they're like, well, I think the lady on the other end just said, that's the way we do things and I can't change it. So
yeah. And she was right. She couldn't, in this case, she couldn't. I think that's an interesting thing because I know that, I think all of us deal with that, right? You just talked about your experience with that. I think all of us, we find something that it's just naturally a hard thing then, right? Because we disagree with it, whatever it is. It really doesn't matter what it is. I can think in my industry, in the insurance industry, how many people I knew that had been in it forever that when we switched, and I am very happy about this, when we switched to all digital applications, there were people kicking and screaming, I want my paper app. And they're like, we don't even take them anymore. They're like, well, then I'm not selling your product anymore. Okay. It was very interesting because to me, what it really did with the digital apps is it made it where we didn't make mistakes like we used to. Because when you did a paper application, there was always a chance that you made a mistake and it wasn't found out until you had sent it in and it had been reviewed. And now you had to go back, and sometimes you had to go back and find the client and fill out a new app and all of that. All of that was over.
Yeah.
But the folks that had always done paper apps and didn't want to switch, their mindset was, no, I'd rather not do a business anymore if I can't do a paper app, which is, let's be honest, it's harder. It's actually harder to do that. But if you're not good with technology, it's not. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Because, like everything's going to change. Everything's always changing. It's, we're moving towards, a different way of doing things. And I know, I think I can understand how people feel, but then at the end of the day, it's like if I think that works for a little while until it doesn't, and then then all the places, everybody's, using digital apps. And now it's like, if you don't learn how to do this, or at least like get somebody to help you to do it, you're not going to be able to get your business done. So,
right. Yeah. The least likely outcome is status quo.
Yeah. And now you just made an easy thing much harder, because now you can't do anything, including, and this may be something for your business. So, you need to do this thing to bring in income. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I think, I get that too, because, we get used to doing things a certain way for so long. And then when suddenly like, whether it's the government makes a change or somebody makes a change to something that just disrupts everything, it's like, oh, they've changed it again. I always, because, I work online a lot. So like, a lot of the times I'm watching algorithms and things like that. And people are always complaining, oh, the algorithms changed again. And they threw off all my ad systems. I'm like, yeah, but the algorithms are like changing every second.
Yeah.
You just notice it every 3 months, and, so anyway, kind of off topic, but, that's one of the things where it's like, you can't control it. So what are you going to do about it? It's just like, that's the way that things are. When they move forward, things change all the time. So I think it's good just to have, a mindset that's, I think like we can certainly adapt to any situation, and, you just have to be willing to bend a little bit. And then, for me, like I just tend to go into like roll with the punches, but I mean, I wasn't always that way. I realized that by not being that way, I was getting stuck in the past and not being able to move forward. So, but yeah, I think it's really good to just have that mindset of like, things are always going to be changing. And when they do, I'll deal with it at that time. And the thing is, once you adapt to it, it actually becomes an easy thing again until it becomes hard again. And that's just the way things go, I think.
So you also have a series of books called Empower. And fill in the blank, right? Empower your fear, empower your thoughts, your success, your deep focus, gratitude, confidence, best habits, morning, self-care, momentum, self-esteem. Woo, that's a bunch of them. So talk a little bit about what got you going down that pathway. Obviously, we talked about empowerment a little bit, but then on these very specific topics, what pushed you that direction to write books about these certain things?
Yeah, great question. So the first book in that series was called Empower Your Fear. And to be honest, when I started to build out this series, it wasn't a series to begin with. I'd written a couple of books actually. And I think Empower Your Fear was I think it's like 7 or 8 years old now. Still doing well. It's in several languages. And then after I published Empower Your Fear, I decided to do one more called Empower Your Thoughts. And then people started asking me, and again, I wasn't planning on doing a series. I just had these ideas for these books and I just wrote them and put them out there. And then people started asking me, they're like, when are you doing a book on like mindset, or when are you doing a book on focus? And I was like, well, I wasn't planning on it. And then more people were asking me when the next book's coming out in this series. And so I was like, oh, okay. So after doing some research and looking at what other authors are doing, building out these series of books, I realized, wow, that's actually could be a smart idea, because now people can, depending on the pain point that they're experiencing, if you're struggling with focus, which we all do, here's the book you need. If you're struggling with your habits, here's the book you need. So I sat down one day and just made a long list of like 30 potential titles that could go into this series. And a few of them, like, I'd already kind of had some content around it, but I would ask people that, like, if you wanted to see a book on gratitude, momentum, or a book on like money mindset or something, like which one would you rather read first? So I'd actually poll people and get their opinions, and I would write that book next. So, but I think when the the series, like, and actually the branding of the series didn't actually start it out like what you see now is probably like every book has had, I think past book 3, they were all branded, but the first 3 books were just like kind of really bad covers and stuff like that. So that's the one thing when, you know, when I put out products, I know that I'm going to end up changing some things. Sometimes it's the cover, sometimes it's some of the interior content needs to be brushed up a little bit, but I do believe in just, you know, I'll write it the best I can, ship it, and then just fix it up as we go along, and I get some feedback. So, yeah. But yeah, I think that for the most part, the series has really kind of taken off, and we actually have a plan to do 24 books in this series, so we're actually halfway there. And I think we'll stop at 24, but I just have like other projects that I want to work on. I do have a book coming out in that series on mindset, by the way. I've got a lot of requests for that, and it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So that is coming in, down the pipeline. Haven't decided on the colors yet. You notice like in the series, all the books are different colors. That was intentional, but yeah.
And you also had mentioned before we went live that you're doing one on Empower Your Wealth as well.
Yes, actually, yeah. It is coming out. It's actually on the market now.
Okay.
And it's the ebook is in pre-order still, but it's going to be going live in probably 3 weeks. Yeah. So people the audiobook's in production. People can order the paperback and the hardcover. They're already out there. But yeah, that's whenever I put out a new book, I usually will put the ebook in pre-order. I'll publish the paperback and hardcover, and then I have an audiobook company, and they put together the audiobook. I do have a couple that are in my own voice, but they just take a lot of time to put together. So I usually just outsource it to somebody who sounds a lot like I do. So
there you go.
yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I see that you actually have a number of different series. I am kind of perusing your website here, but another one of yours that was actually a bestseller was Fail Big. So yeah, I think that this is a huge deal. Myself, obviously, was a huge deal for you too. And the lessons I've learned in being an entrepreneur and being self-employed, I was in corporate America for 19 years. Corporate America decided it didn't need me anymore. It was the best thing that ever happened. Mm-hmm. But what I never learned in school, and what I never really learned in corporate America, because they didn't teach you this, was any true business. I knew we were very good. My wife and I ran a catering company. The food was excellent. We did a very good job. We were highly requested and highly sought after, great reviews on everything that we did, but we didn't have excellent business knowledge. And we didn't expand our business the way that we should have. We had a very niche market. We wanted to stay in that market because unlike a lot of caterers, we had our weekends free. We worked mostly mornings and lunch times, and then we were done for the day, other than preparing stuff for the next day. So we had plenty of time to spend with the kids and to spend with each other. But when the market that we were working in dramatically changed, we were not prepared business-wise because we had no backup plan. We had no backup market. We weren't, quite honestly, we were not even paying attention to that market enough to know that the potential for change was even there. And so, we went from about a $300,000 to $400,000 a year business to all of a sudden that market would have maybe gave us $50,000 to $60,000. And so it was, the business in essence failed at that point in time. And because we elected not to make any changes, we didn't want to change our lives to be traditional caterers where we didn't have weekends or evenings anymore. But we learned a valuable lesson, right? But we failed big. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you can't have a business that was running as successful as we are and then just basically shut it down whenever your market went away. But we learned some valuable lessons there. Are those the type of things that you delve into in your book? What can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I think everyone, if you're an entrepreneur and you haven't failed, congratulations, first of all, but I don't know how you did it.
Yeah. No, yeah. The book certainly touches on those things. I'm actually, just quick insight on it too. We're going to be relaunching the book again with probably going to trim it down a little bit and put some new material in there because it's probably one of the best books I think that I've put out. I'm just saying that based on feedback, but it never really had a good shot in the market. I just didn't pay a lot of attention to it when I marketed it, but I'm actually building a course around it because you're right. Because the fear of failure is one of those things where it stops a lot of people from actually starting anything, right? Because just going back to, let's just say, when we're in school, right? I mean, if we fail a test or, we actually just, we get punished. Well, we feel like we're getting punished for it, right? They hold us back and, other kids in the class, well, back in my day anyway, other kids in the class found out you failed it, it was a big joke. So you actually felt really bad about failing. So we kind of get conditioned to it, that, failing's not a good thing. And I guess we look at it, I mean, of course, who wants to fail at anything, especially tests or anything where we're going to get held back on it. But
right.
But when you become, let's just say if you're starting your own business or you become an entrepreneur, it's like failure is the way. And that's a hard mindset to really, wrap your head around, because especially if you're investing money in your first business and that goes broke, and then your second business and well, that goes broke, like how much further you keep going, before you can't get any more money from the bank, or, you're just like in such a situation where now you've got to go back to your old job maybe, and then you really feel like a failure because now you're back doing the one thing that you tried to escape from in the first place. So, didn't necessarily happen to me like that, but I mean, I had a friend of mine who went through that like a few times, and he just, his attitude was like, if I get knocked down, I'll stay down for a little bit and I'll get back up, and he was just like that. Now I know, again, I think a lot of that's a mindset. A lot of it has to do with how you're built as well. And this is why I think actually having, like for me, having a failure is like, it's like a notch in my belt. It's like a good thing. To me, that's a win, because if I fail at something, then that just means like, okay, like you can take Thomas Edison's approach. Oh, I failed at another light bulb. I'll just make another one. Or I found another way it doesn't work.
Another way not to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, I'm not about to, I don't know if I'd have the patience to do 10,000 light bulbs, but there's a few businesses that I had where, not like I didn't have a lot invested, but there was certainly, actually I have books that failed. Like I put them out there. I put like, 10 grand into a book launch or something like that. And just like, it just fell flat and it just wouldn't go anywhere. So, and there were a couple of times I thought, well, maybe I'm not really cut out for this. Maybe I should just, stop while I'm ahead. And, I didn't. I actually I was like, okay, I just shifted the way I was doing things and just tried it a different way. And I noticed that when I did that, it worked better this time, so, and then I would fail at that as well. And I was like, okay, let's try it again, but let's try it differently. So always, I do believe like, if you fail at one thing, should you do the exact same thing again? I'm probably more like, I wouldn't do that again. I would try something if I'm really passionate about it though. I'll try it, just, like shift course a little bit, try it a different way. People have to just apply that concept to whatever it is that they're working on. But, but the concept of failure though, I think like, again, Tom Bilyeu, he always said that, failure is like a data rich, information stream. So it's like you learn about the thing, you learn a lot about yourself from failing. Sure, it does toughen you up, but it can also make you really scared to try, something new if you allow that failure to, just basically like if you take it personally, which let's be honest, who doesn't, oh, it's,
Right.
my business failed and now I can't support my family and now what do we do? So that is a hard thing to work through, but I don't know, like I've always just been, my attitude towards that is like, all right, before I even start anything, I've already accepted the fact that I'm going to fail. And I'm like, it's going to happen. So, let's just accept it right now and let's get to work, because what happens with a lot of people, and I've been in this mindset before, was like, I'm going to start this business and I, pray to God it doesn't fail, it's like, and we're just hoping that we don't mess it up. But I go into it now thinking, I'm going to definitely fail at this, whether it's, building a new business, or building a branch of my publishing business, whatever it may be. Because I've had a lot of those things, not a lot, but I've had quite a few, failures before. Was like, I knew that going into it, there was a high possibility that it wasn't going to work out. And it didn't. And I was like, okay, well, I was kind of prepared for this, but it still hurts, so, and that's the thing, it will hurt. stay down for a little while, think about it, and kind of run it through your mind. Like, what would you have done differently? And because the thing is, like, there are no guarantees for anything. Even if, like you're mentioning, like you had a successful business, and then suddenly, like, you're feeling great, you've got success, and then suddenly something turns around, and now you weren't expecting to, be back at step 2 when you're like up on, you went way ahead. You're on step 10, and feeling great, and suddenly, like, a year later, 6 months later, you're back to the beginning. Right. So that's hard to take too, especially when you were successful at it. And then suddenly the market changes, technology changes, which it always does. Like, that's the thing. Things are always changing. So the failure is inevitable, I think, right? It's just, how are you going to deal with it when it happens? And, maybe a lot of people will start over. Maybe they will start something new because they realize, like, they've gone as far as they could with, that business or that relationship, or, whatever it may be. So, yeah. Yeah, the book's a little bit lengthy. It does dive into the book's not about how to avoid failure, of course. It's actually how to handle failure when it happens, not if it happens, when it happens. Here are some things you can actually do depending on your situation. So,
yeah, and okay, I'm gonna touch on a couple of things. First of all, I think that you said failure is inevitable, and that actually, for y'all out there, that doesn't actually mean that your business failed. It just means that there's going to be failures in that business. So I'm going to go back to what you talked about earlier when you failed a test. Failing a test doesn't mean you failed a class. It can be if you let that failure eat you up, right? If that failure eats you up and then you just never recover from that. And so now it just becomes, once again, a snowball of failure because you're like, I'm just not smart enough to even be in this class. I don't know this stuff. I'll never know it. And if you beat yourself up to that, well, guess what? Now it's happened. But I think one of the other things you said that is interesting is that you go into it expecting to fail, because there's obviously a completely opposite school of thought out there that you should always go into stuff with a positive mindset, that there's no way this is ever going to fail. I'm going to kill this thing. I'm going to do so good. This is going to be the best one of this kind of business, XYZ, whatever it is. This is going to be the best one of these businesses ever. I'm going to be the best at this ever. In other words, you build yourself up. You got this great positive mindset, and you roll into this thing, and then you're this unstoppable force. So talk about that versus what you're saying, that I go in expecting to fail, because that's a very different school of thought.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a great analogy. So let's just say, yeah, somebody and I've seen this actually happen many times before, where people went into something, they're like, yeah, I actually coach a lot of authors on how to write books and publish books and stuff like that. And some people come into the program where it's like, I'm going to write the best book ever. It's going to be a bestseller. And it turns out that it wasn't the best book ever. It wasn't a bestseller. And they feel like a failure, but they published a book, right? It's like, who cares about all the other stuff? You published the book, right? So you didn't fail at anything. Some people come in, they have no confidence at all. They're not even sure what they're going to write. And we work through it, and they eventually get their book published, and it kind of takes off, and they weren't expecting it. They're like, wow, like, I just wanted to get a book published. I didn't even think I could do that. And now they're, I don't know, signing a contract with a publishing house or something, right? So both of those approaches are okay. Like, they're good. It's just that when you start from the concept of like, I'm going to fail first and learn along the way, you're actually, you're embracing it in the beginning, because you're right. Like, I mean, just because you failed the test doesn't mean you failed the whole class, right? And there will be, missteps along the way and little failures along the way, but you can still keep going with that, right? But what I've seen happen a lot of times, you may have seen this as well, like people go into it with the idea that they're going to knock it out of the park right away, and they're going to become the best at this and that. And then that doesn't happen. So when they fall a lot harder, and because they weren't prepared for it to begin with, I've just seen them, like, I've seen it time and time again. They just said, nope, this isn't for me. And they went off and did something else. So it was the people who actually went into it with the concept of like, maybe like, like they didn't come into it, the situation where it's like, I'm a total failure and this isn't going to work. They came into it with, it is actually it doesn't sound like a positive mindset, but it actually is when you frame it up. It's like, I'm going to start this thing knowing that I'm going to have failures along the way, So I'm okay with that, right? Because I'm still going to accomplish my goal. Now, beyond the goal, like again, let's just using publishing a book as an example, I've got my book out there. Like anything else that happens after that is just gravy. So I hope that, that's clear. It's just like the two mindsets, and,
absolutely. And so and the way I see it is one is kind of based in reality.
mm-hmm.
And the other is based almost in a fantasy, right? Because it's very unlikely that you're going to be the very best ever at whatever it is that you're going into, or that you're going to have no problems, right? You're going to have no failures. It's very unlikely that whatever you're doing, not saying it doesn't happen to people. We know it does. But here, I think another interesting thing too is when it does happen, that means that there's usually going to be a failure in another business that they try. Right? Because now they almost have that bulletproof thing, right? Now all of a sudden, look at me, everything, I'm Midas, everything I touch is gold. Oh my gosh, that turned to 10.
Mm-hmm.
that didn't work out at all.
Yeah.
So I think that helps you though, right? It regardless, even if you don't face that failure and everything goes perfectly, having that mindset, knowing as you're speaking, each time that you go into a business, you know that the reality is it could fail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think I've not gone bankrupt, but I've almost gone bankrupt just a couple of times. Like, when I was putting my publishing business together, even before that, when I was working on the job, mostly, it's just decisions that I made that I shouldn't have made. And when I look back, I was like, why did I do that? I was like,
yeah,
but will I do it again? Absolutely not. It's like lesson learned.
yeah.
Yeah. So actually, I'm not saying like I'm in love with failure or anything like that, but I mean, for me, I just embrace it as it's part of the journey. It has to be, it's part of the road less traveled. So, yeah.
You're right, because if you learn from it, and you can learn multiple things, right? Sometimes you learn ways not to do it, but other times you learn some things about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you learn stuff about other people. I know that's a bad thing to say, but sometimes you realize that you put your faith or your trust in someone in this particular thing that you shouldn't have, or an organization maybe that you partnered with that you shouldn't have. There's all kind of things that can be in there, but even if you say it wasn't my fault, so let's kind of go down this pathway for just a second here. It's not my fault. Well, wait a second. Who chose to work with that company? Who chose to work with that partner?
Yeah.
So whose fault is it really? Whose failure is it? Right? It's still a failure.
Yeah. I'll share a quick story actually on that. Interesting. I love that because during COVID, I was really scrambling. I was like really struggling like everybody. Business was failing, wasn't writing anything. And I thought, I need a funnel. I need to build a funnel. So I ended up taking whatever savings I had left, and I went and found this company that worked through ClickFunnels, and they were going to set up this funnel, and I was going to make like all this money. They didn't say that actually, but I mean, I went into it with my mindset like, this is it. I finally found, and by the way, what it really was a shiny object, right?
Yeah.
My next book, by the way, for Do the Hard Things First, is on how to overcome shiny object syndrome based on this experience I had. So I took like my last 10 grand, paid it to this company. And the goal was like, they would work with me for 90 days. I'd have these courses done and this and that. I did have all these things ready for the funnel, which I'm like, yeah, I'll have it all done. I didn't have anything done, and when 90 days rolled around, the guy's like, where's your stuff? And I'm like, well, and I procrastinated. I didn't have anything ready, right? And that was it. And they were done. I was like, yeah, well, if you want to work with us again, it'll cost you like another $5,000 or something, which I didn't have. And so we parted ways. And I'll tell you, I was bitter for a long time, right? First of all, so yeah, what I was telling myself for the longest time is they took my money, they scammed me, and the reality is I remember sending them the money directly through my bank account. So I sent the money over there. I hired them. They didn't hire me, and that was a really hard pill to swallow. It still is sometimes when I think about it. I still feel like, I really fell for that one. But the thing is, I was looking for it. I found it. And when I invested in it and I just, So anyway, back to the point is, it was all my fault, So I'd love to just get a T-shirt that says it's all my fault and just start my day with that, because it was true. It's like, well, yeah, I did hire them. I gave them my money, and now, it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. But again, I was, chasing those shiny objects, hoping to get something that I just wasn't ready for. So there was definitely a lesson there. And I'd done that a couple of other times. Yeah, like hiring people to work on your website or something, and that didn't work out. And it's like, oh, they really let me down. I said, well, I could have done more research. I did hire them, and it didn't work out. So, but now I'm just like, okay, it didn't work out. So next person I hire, I'm going to do things a little bit differently, and, probably do a little bit more research. So again, it is a learning experience, but holding on to like putting the blame onto the other person when maybe, and maybe it was 50-50, or maybe some of it was their fault. But the thing is, like, that's the mindset that keeps you trapped in the past. That's what prevents you from moving forward, is holding on to, the blame and just, wishing that, the world would treat you better. So, but those things are going to happen, I think so.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm going to go way back to something else. You talked about that. So let's go back to your friend way back earlier in the show, your friend that had a hole in the wall, right? Your friend had a hole in the wall. Why didn't he fix it? And why didn't he call somebody else? Well, maybe 3 or 4 years before that, he had hired a contractor to do some work, and that contractor didn't do a good job, or took the money and run, or whatever. It doesn't make any difference. He had a bad experience. So what's his answer now? A poster. I want to put this poster over this hole in the wall that my kids knocked in my wall, because I can't trust anyone to come and fix it, right? But these are what we do, right? This is the crazy thing that experiences do to us, that when we don't really deal with them and overcome them, then all of a sudden we let that experience dictate some of the crazy actions that we have in the future, or some of the reactions to things that we have in the future. It's such a weird thing. Being the human mind is such a weird animal, and the experiences that we have affect us in such strange ways over our life. They call it a journey, and it certainly is, with all the twists and turns and craziness that it is. But I just think that, I don't know why I tied those things together, but it just made me think about, why didn't he get that fixed? There was some underlying reason. Maybe that's the kind of thing. It was already heard a story of somebody else. Maybe it didn't even have him, right? Maybe the guy down the street, or his neighbor, his brother or sister, or mom or dad or whatever, had something that they had done and they didn't do a good job. So I'm just going to put a poster over this hole instead.
No, absolutely. Yeah. That's a really interesting concept, because, like I said, I work with a lot of people who are like, creating things and putting them out in the marketplace. And I was working with a woman recently, and she was launching her product, and she didn't want to put any money into the marketing of it. And I was like, well, you put all your time and effort into it. Why not? And the reason was because several years ago, she had launched several other products and put a lot of money into those, and they all failed. So this product, she wasn't going to put anything into it, and just, the approach was like, I'm going to see how it goes. And I said to her, well, I can tell you how it's going to go. Nothing's going to happen. No one's going to buy it. It's just going to sit out there, and you're going to end up with, like, the same situation that you had before. So that was just an example, but like, you're right. Everybody, I think a lot of people are stuck on something that happened in the past. We're holding on to it, clinging to it because it was very painful. And we're bringing that, past experience into the present moment, where it's just holding us hostage. So.
Right. Well, it goes back to just like you talked about, fail big. I mean, if my business failed this time, that means that every other one I open is going to fail as well. I mean, that's not the case. That's just what you said with Edison. He could have, let's be honest, most people would have given up. Mm-hmm. Instead, he learned thousands of ways not to make a light bulb, and that's the way he looked at it. But it was his mindset, right? But you have to wonder. Obviously, none of us were there to see this. How many times he was really close to giving up?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reason he is Edison is because he kept pushing forward,
Right.
He could have given up around, number 9,133. He could have given up, and I think we wouldn't be sitting in the dark. I think someone else would have figured it out,
Sure.
But he had gone so far that, and again, like, yeah, I think that's a great point though, is like, how many times did he say, this just isn't going to work? I'm going to shelve it for a while and just, try again next year or something. Right. But, so maybe somebody else would have picked it up. Who knows? But, I think that's, I think when we look at a lot of people who are successful, we do look at the, like, oh, well, use Stephen King. Oh, like Stephen King's he can write anything because he's Stephen King. It's like, well, he's probably Stephen King because he just showed up every day and wrote 10 pages for 50 years, which is really what he did. He was just, which was, a lot of high performers are kind of like that. They just show up for 20 years, put in the work. And then when they finally get recognized for what they're doing, we may call it an overnight success. But thing is, they built 10,000 light bulbs before they did. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I heard one of the guys that I'm pretty good friends with and does a lot of stuff on LinkedIn the other day. He talked about his 8-year journey to overnight success.
Yeah.
It was all the work he put in that no one knew about, right? That no one even knew who he was. And then all of a sudden, he became known very well for what he does. But I thought that was in because he had did that in this little short interview I was watching, and that's what he said. Yeah, it's my 8-year journey to overnight success. So the same thing you're talking about. How many people, and we see it, I think, in music, we see it in books, we see it in a lot of things. That when someone finally achieves that all of a sudden some of their past work becomes better than it probably was to begin with.
Yeah, exactly. Well. Yeah, and just to just to go back to authors again, so like Dan Brown, for example, like he put out the Da Vinci Code was actually his 5th book, but nobody had heard of him. They didn't know he'd written 4 books previously, and so when the Da Vinci Code just became like this big international bestseller, selling like 50 million copies, all his other books were suddenly bestsellers as well. Suddenly
Right.
like they were on the New York. But that's just that one example, though. I mean, there's many other examples of other entrepreneurs or people who created things. But yeah, that was it. Like they just didn't give up. They just kept pushing forward. And it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. What if I do one more? Like I'm always, the question I always ask myself was like, what if I just go, what if I just do one more thing? What if I go take one more step? What if I just invest a little bit more into this thing? Like what could happen? Like what's the potential? And I think that's kind of like, I think a part of it's the pathway to mastery, but it's also like, you're just going to push yourself a little bit further just to see, if you can go like another mile or two. Because you never know what's, what else is waiting for you down the road. So,
No, I agree. I think that we are our own worst enemy. There's no doubt. Each of us are our own worst enemy. We're all, and in most cases, we're our own worst critic as well. And embracing failure and not letting it beat us down, but teach us, and then. The mindset, as we talked about to begin with, the mindset of not just overcoming failure, but looking at what your habits are and helping yourself to, as we talked about first, doing the hard things, getting those out of the way, getting those behind you so that you can be more focused on, in some case, unfortunately, we think of it this way too, the menial things are the monotonous things. A lot of times those are not as monotonous as you've just accomplished something big because you've overcome the hard thing. You're still so kind of full of, boom, baby, I got this thing done that now I can wipe this stuff. I can fill out this form for the government with no problem because I did this first. And this was so much harder that this is no problem whatsoever. And I think that's what's so interesting, as I mentioned earlier about the human mind and about each individual, that we can accomplish so much if we would just let ourselves do it. And it can be so hard sometimes to get out of, as my wife and I used to joke about, I'm having a bad week, I'm in a rut. It can be so hard to get out of your rut sometimes. And usually that rut is we've placed ourselves in there. We've let the world beat us down and put us in this rut. And you just got to climb out of it. You've got to. You mentioned earlier, sometimes you can just be down for a little bit. It's okay to feel bad, but you've got to get back up. You cannot let this thing defeat you. You've got to get back up because every single one of you that's listening and out there, every one of you is worthy of the success that you can achieve. So don't let your failures define you. Success is just right around the corner.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Don't give up because the finish line could be just around the corner, so.
That's right. That light bulb could be the very next try could be that light bulb.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm under the impression, I put out a few books over the years, but my mindset toward it is like, I haven't written my best book yet, and if I were a musician, I'd probably just say the same thing. I haven't written my best song yet or whatever it may be. Like, I'm just under the, like my mindset is like, there's got to be something better, like more that's driving me forward. So I just keep trying to get better at that thing. So.
Absolutely. That's I think that's a great place for us to stop here. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come for each of you out there. Scott Allen, the best is yet to come for you, buddy. What you have put out there, I can see can help, has helped and will help literally thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000, if not millions of people that have an opportunity to read your books and to see the insights from all the tens of thousands of hours that you spent in really looking at mindset and how to overcome so many of these situations we put ourselves in. I am very, very excited that you were with us today. It has certainly been a pleasure to listen to your insights and your thoughts on all of this. Are there any closing thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think something that I like to share is, if you're stuck, you're not really sure how to move forward. So there's just, I like to keep things simple. And there's just 3 things that really help me out. So the first thing is just getting clarity on what is it that you want? What is one thing that you really want? And if you're not sure, just pen to paper, start writing out your ideas, figure out that one thing. You may already know what it is. Maybe you don't, but figure out what it is. Clarity is the key. And then from there, figure out what are the steps you need to take to start moving towards that goal. You don't have to have the whole plan laid out in front of you. You just need to know, because starting is the key. Like, I think starting something is always the hardest part. And maybe you have to start it every day, but, show up for yourself every day and just do one thing that's moving you towards that thing. And the third thing is, when you fall down, you fail or something like that, just realize that is part of the process, right? So, and just, again, show up every day, put in the time, and whatever it is that you want, it will materialize. You can manifest your destiny, not to get woo-woo, but I've done it several times where, I realize I want this thing. What do I need to do to get it? And I just start it with something, so whether that's reading a book or watching a podcast video or whatever it is, but I had to be very intentional with the actions I was taking that are moving me to, in that direction. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Scott, once again, thanks so much for being on here. Folks, if you want to learn more about Scott, check out all of his books. They're all listed out there at scottallenpublishing.com. Allen is with an A-N, not an E-N, so scottallenpublishing.com. You can go and check it out, learn more about him. You can even download the first chapter of Do the Hard Things First. Check it out. Maybe it is going to fit in with what you want to learn more about yourself. Lots of other information out there. Go and check it out. I'm sure folks can connect with you on various other places like LinkedIn and Facebook and such, and follow you and maybe connect with you out there as well.
Absolutely. For sure.
All right. Thanks again, Scott. We really do appreciate you being on the Health and Wealth Power Hour. And if you didn't catch that earlier, Scott is in Osaka, Japan. So it is really late where he is at as we record this, very early where I am at. So thank you once again for staying up late to be with us, Scott.
Great conversation. Thanks for having me here today.
You're welcome. All right, gang. Hope you enjoyed that wonderful conversation with Scott. Don't forget about a couple other events that we have monthly. You can always catch us on the last Tuesday of every month, live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Last Tuesday, 11 a.m. Central Time. Why does healthcare suck? That's right. Why does healthcare suck? We delve into all of the different reasons why things are going crazy in the U.S. healthcare system, and we talk about some of the fixes for that so that you can avoid some of the issues that others have seen. Last month, of course, we had the special episode where we talked about all of the crazy jargon that we use in the health insurance and financial services world. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was one of the most entertaining that we've ever had because we had so much fun saying all the crazy words that we use in our industry and giving the definitions of those. On top of that, don't forget that every Monday at 10 a.m. Central Time, you can listen to industry updates across those same 4 different venues. That is LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Every week on the Kickstart, I give an industry update and my insights on what it really means to you. So you can catch that 10 a.m. Central Time every week on across those things, the Kickstart. Thanks a lot for being with us. We'll catch you next time on the Health and Wealth Power Hour. We are out of here.